All right, everybody, welcome. It is now, looks like July 2nd already, a couple days before the holiday, and I'm pretty excited about this one. We're going to be doing a training discussion today on the cannabis test. And I really like this test, guys. It's something that's pretty special around here, kind of unique. And so we're going to go ahead and get right into it. The cannabis test. All right, so who needs this panel? Well, people using cannabis products, of course, for therapeutic reasons, and people that will experience some pain, anxiety, sleep disorders. Those are kind of the top three reasons why people will use cannabis. Now, you'll notice I'm not saying the word CBD here. I'm saying the word cannabis because there are several states in the United States where other forms of the cannabis plant are legal to consume. So we're going to get into the differences here in a few minutes. But cannabis, or CBD, depending on what you want to think it's called, okay, there's different types of the cannabis plant. Like I said, we're going to talk about that. It's also used for epilepsy and seizures, pain and inflammation, PTSD and anxiety, Crohn's disease, misspelling, multiple sclerosis, and opioid, again, misspelling, withdrawal. Okay? So some of the other reasons that people will use cannabis for getting high, right? We all, not all of us, but some of us have experienced that when smoking marijuana, maybe as a teenager, maybe today where it's legal. So we're not going to go ahead and be champions for marijuana here. Marijuana is a form of the cannabis plant and is legal in several states. And so our cannabis test does not discriminate against those types of the plant. So we're going to go ahead and get into the meat and potatoes here right away. Let's go over some terminology. Cannabis. First of all, cannabis is not just marijuana. All right, there's actually three different types of cannabis plants out there. They look the same. Some are shorter plants, some are taller plants. The leaves look a little different, and the flowers look a little different. But there's three main categories here. We've got sativa, indica, and ruderalis. So some of the things that are derived from the cannabis plants are THC. We'll talk about that. CBD. Okay, we'll talk about that, obviously. But there's marijuana, and believe it or not, hemp and marijuana and hash are very closely related here in the plant species. Slight differences. All three of the plants excrete, from the flower, certain cannabinoids. Now, what cannabinoids are, this is the term you need to know. Cannabinoids are actually the chemical compounds that are secreted by the flowers. Hey, funny enough. And so some of the cannabinoids are CBD, and that's cannabidiol, and that's the non-psychoactive compound. CBD will not make you high. THC, that's tetrahydrocannabinol, and that's the psychoactive compound. That is what's present in marijuana, and that is what gets you high. So CBD and THC, both of them have benefits, and both of them have drawbacks. We're going to go over that. Just remember, CBD, you won't get high. THC, if you consume enough of that, you will get high. But here's something that's very important to understand, and it's a basis for this test, is that it's been scientifically proven, and they research it and continue to research our endocannabinoid system. That's something that's present in every animal species on the planet that has a backbone, the endocannabinoid system. And it's pretty complex, but basically what the endocannabinoid system is about is it kind of keeps a homeostasis in our body, keeps us balanced. And it's, like I said, found in all of the animals on the planet with a backbone. Now, the endocannabinoid system is comprised of three main components, okay? And there's many, many different parts to this system, but we're trying to simplify it as much as possible. First component of the endocannabinoid system, again, that's present in your body, are the receptors, okay? Your endocannabinoid receptors or cannabinoid receptors. They're found on all the cell surfaces, and the endocannabinoid system is present in all of our major biological systems, okay? So all of our cells have receptors. Then The second component of the endocannabinoid system is actually the endocannabinoids. What those are molecules that activate the receptors. Okay. Now, probably the two most important ones that we'll talk about today, these endocannabinoid receptors, is the CB1 and the CB2. There's more than that for receptors, but we're going to talk about the CB1 and CB2 because the CB1 is the receptor that is in our system, is the one that's responsible for getting us high. It's mood altering. And CB2, that'll actually react with the CBD. So CB1 will interact with the THC, and CB2 is one of the ones that will interact with the CBD. Then the third component are enzymes. Okay, what these do is once the cannabinoids react with the receptors, there has to be a way to get rid of them, so the enzymes actually break down these endocannabinoids after they're used. Some of the things that our endocannabinoid system are responsible for, the actual firing of the brain cell neutrons, right? The actual electrical impulses between our brain cells is actually partly regulated by the endocannabinoid system. Also, very, very important and interesting here, is it also is responsible for inflammation regulation. Now, some of our previous panels, we deal with inflammation quite a bit. So this is the first time we're going to be talking about this. In addition to all that other information, very important to understand that just as important as your immune system is your endocannabinoid system. So what this means essentially is this, is that when we were created, we were embedded with this system. And this system is designed, honestly, to react with the cannabis plants. It really is. So whatever your moral or ethical beliefs are about cannabis, it's time to face the fact that we're designed to interact with it in one way, shape, or form. It's a natural process. Another thing we want to talk about today is terpenes. Think of terpenes as an essential oil, okay, because there's pine and there's linalool. There's all kinds of different ones out there, hundreds of them. And so these terpenes are actually aromatic oils that are secreted along with the cannabinoids from the plants. Now, what's interesting is that cannabis plants can be grown in a multitude of climates, different climates and different soils and different areas around the world. That's what makes cannabis unique, is that the climate, the weather that the plants are grown in, the age of the plant, the fertilizers and the soil types, and even the time of day when the plants are harvested can influence the terpenes in the plant. Now, terpenes, like I said, consider them to be like an essential oil, and they all have their own benefits. You can Google those on your own. So this cannabis test studies over 150 SNPs. Okay, you guys remember what the SNPs are? But we break the report down into 6 different groups of categories here, 6 different categories. Medicate, sleep, relaxation, creativity, elevation, and that's another word for getting high. Okay? Energize. So that's going to be the 6 different groups. Now, even though the test studies over 150 SNPs, the person is not going to get a report that lists all 150 SNPs. What they're going to get a list of is the SNPs that were discovered in their DNA, the mutations, where it could have some problems or some issues or some interesting things to talk about. So unlike some of our other retail panels that will display all the SNPs that were looked at, and with the green, amber, or red, if you can remember, the hetero and homozygous results, this one's going to be different. This one's only going to reveal the SNPs of interest for this person's particular DNA. Therefore, this person's report will be very unique compared to other people's reports. So, the report is divided into 10 sections. The first section, which is very important, is warnings. The second section is recommended terpenes based on their DNA profile that will help them in those 6 categories. And really important here is the THC to CBD ratio. So along the next sections, there's 6 groups like we were discussing earlier. There's actual product, recommendations by name brand, and by strain. And these are broken down basically in geographical areas with the most up-to-date lab information that we have as far as the formularies for some of these products. So the interesting thing here is even if they recommend a product or a strain of plant for these certain situations, those particular products may not be available by name to their immediate access. So what it also does is it gives you the formulas, the important parts, the recommended terpenes for that person's DNA, and the recommended THC to CBD ratio. So therefore, if they can't find product by name, then they can seek out, the formularies. This is interesting. I'm sure you guys have all seen it. It's on the shelves of many, many stores now, CBD oil. Okay? On the bottle, it doesn't really list the active ingredients, right? It'll tell you one of 2 things. It'll usually tell you if it's a full spectrum CBD oil, which means that there is a percentage of THC in it, or it'll be a broad spectrum, which means that it will have the THC removed. So those of you that know people that have to have urinalysis for their employment, THC in the CBD oils out there, the full spectrum products, may make them pop positive on the urinalysis test. Therefore, to meet the need for those people, they developed a broad spectrum CBD product which has 0 THC. Here's the problem with that. When they remove the THC from the CBD oil, they also remove all of the other things that are beneficial in that plant. And then in order to make it something of use, they manually, by man, add in back different terpenes or different cannabinoids. It's very important to understand that anything that says broad spectrum on it is a man-made product, essentially, where everything's been stripped and then manually inserted. Now remember, we talked about the endocannabinoid system. This thing has millions of receptors in our body. And all the scientists that research this stuff agree that the endocannabinoid system has all these receptors, and there's different interactions that they know of that can occur with these terpenes and cannabinoids interacting together. But what they don't know, okay, and this is why it's important to understand this, what they don't know is exactly how it works, okay? All they know is we have this system, we have these receptors, we have the 3 components of the endocannabinoid system, but we don't know receptor 1, 2, 3, 4, 5Z is the one for this, or, EB22 or whatever is for that. So that's why when people are creating these man-made formulas, it could be good or it could be bad. And jury's still out on that. Also, you may notice that right now the CBD business is in the news a lot lately because it's another unregulated business. And when you say unregulated, that should bring 2 things to mind. 1, the government doesn't have their mitts in it yet. Okay? I say yet because they're laying back in the weeds, waiting and waiting and waiting. What they're waiting for is they're waiting for somebody that takes a 6,000 milligram CBD oil and they're on a blood thinner to have a stroke. They're waiting for that because then they can swoop in. Some of these pharmaceutical companies, as you guys know from our PGX testing, they kill people every day of the week, okay? Every day of the week someone dies from a drug interaction or from prescription error. But with CBD, one time is all it's going to take and the government swoops in. Right now what the government's doing is they're kind of in the background, like I said, laying in the weeds, but what they're doing is they're poking at the banking institutions. They're basically saying, listen, CBD is a cannabis product. So it's legal right now federally to most states to ship it right to the state, to buy it in most states. There's a couple out there that are behind the times. But they're like, you can ship it there. But when you collect the money for that product, Mr. Vendor, you are now leaving your funds susceptible to seizure by the federal or state governments. Yeah, interesting stuff. So right now we're in a dilemma. AMT Wellness is one of our companies here at AMT, and we actually manufacture CBD oil. And so one of our problems is we can manufacture it all day long, we can ship it all day long, but we can't collect the money for the orders right now because the banks, like I said, the money's subject to seizure by the federal government. There's loopholes and ways around it, of course, like everything else, but not really legally so. So therefore, we've put our product sales on hold until it gets worked out. Interesting to know, the government's got their hands in it. So we talked about getting back to the report. The other section, the last section of the report is what I find the most interesting. If you know me, you know that I really will like this part of it. It's the raw data, okay? And this is just similar, very similar to the retail panel testing with the other products that we have. It's going to show the mutation and the problems with that allele when it's dominant or homo or heterozygous. And it also will give you recommendations, lifestyle recommendations based on your DNA makeup, okay? So we'll get to the best part of this presentation here right now. The report, legality, and disclaimer. Okay, so this is very important to know. You know, some of you are uncomfortable with using the word cannabis in your presentations or talking to customers, but unfortunately, that's the right term for even the hemp plant. Okay, so cannabis, like I said, and remember a review, is three different types of plants or three different types of species out there. Now, this isn't including all the strains and the mutations that they intentionally do. This is basically, like I said, you got your marijuana, you got your hemp, and you got your hash. Okay. So the report does not take into consideration federal or state laws as far as what states is it legal to use marijuana, what states is it legal to use CBD oil. What this basically is a legal document, or it's legal to produce this document because we're not assisting anyone in breaking the law, and there's disclaimers. Okay? And the disclaimers will basically state that, hey, you take your fate in your own hands if you're recommended to use, THC products. Again, this recommendation is based on their DNA. Because some people, CBD will not work. Some people, THC will not work. And we're going to go over some of the differences there. So the unfortunate thing is right now the consumers that are out there buying CBD oil off the shelf at the gas station, convenience store, grocery store, pharmacy, are not knowing what they're buying. That is the whole motivation for this report, is to show people if you're going to use this stuff or entertaining this stuff, then you want to know what you should be taking. Now, my father-in-law the other day went to the chiropractor. Okay, and the chiropractor, when my father-in-law was bringing it up about CBD oil, she says, yeah, they sell it right down the road there. And he's like, well, what do they sell? And the chiropractor was like, well, I don't, they sell CBD oil. Even some of the medical professionals are out there not knowing what we're teaching you today. Okay, they think CBD oil is CBD oil. As a matter of fact, back in 2006, I had a motorcycle accident, and somebody offered me CBD oil because I have chronic back pain. And I tried it. I didn't even know what it was. All I knew is it was CBD oil. This is back in 2006. And didn't even know what was going on with it, and I just thought it was marijuana in a bottle, liquid form, and it wasn't. I learned that very quickly, but I also learned that what I took didn't work for me. Okay? And it's not that CBD oil couldn't be a benefit to my body. It's that that particular bottle wasn't going to work. And so, FYI, another term for you is tincture. Tincture is the liquid form of the CBD oil. That's the bottles you see with the little eyedroppers. They're called tinctures. And we'll talk about that some more, how you can ingest this stuff. So, again, we don't take into consideration the federal or state laws. We also products that contain THC and CBD are treated with no discrimination. Because our report is honest. It's going to tell somebody, hey, even though it's not legal in your state, THC is probably going to be the way to go for you to get relief from these symptoms. But we don't direct them to go break the law in any way. The report does not dispense any medical advice. Okay? All of the information gathered here is gathered just like any other DNA test. And there's lifestyle recommendation, but there is absolutely no medical advice. And as with all of our DNA panel reports, it's highly recommended that they're interpreted by a physician. Really important one here. Any customer-specific test result inquiries need to be directed to the corporate office. Under no circumstances will we approve you interpreting the results for any people that get them. When they get them, they may call you and say, hey, what does this mean? What does that mean? You got to have to bite your tongue and fight your urge. Even if you know the answer, I want you to direct them to the corporate office, because what we're going to tell them is something very similar. You need to call your doctor. Here's what the report's going to look like. Cover page, it's got a little table of contents on it. This is looking a little different than our other DNA reports, right? A disclaimer. By the way, there's a sample report in the download section here for the agents. There's some terminology for the customer, letting them know, believe it or not, what DNA is: a gene, a SNP, alleles. An introduction to cannabis lets them know what's going on. And get this, in this introduction, they got some warnings up here. They even give dosage recommendations. So one thing I want to point out is that these products, regardless of the version of cannabis plant that someone's going to put in their body, can be consumed with a tincture. That's the liquid in a bottle. That's placed under the tongue. It's called sublingual. They can get an edible. Okay, that's like a gummy bear, chocolate, candy, anything, popcorn nowadays. Anything that's got a food product can actually contain this stuff. And then there's inhalation in the form of vaping or smoking. Okay? How to read this report? Again, we talked about it has 10 sections, so it gives them instructions on how to read the report and the activity groups that they'll be discussing. Section 1, right? Warnings. It's hard to read right here. We have a version 2 coming out here any day now. It's going to have these warnings more prevalent in the report. But this happens to say, if you can't read it, it says, individuals with this variant who also carry this certain variant have been shown to have an elevated risk for Alzheimer's. Recommendations. Look for strains high in alpha-pinene, which has been shown to increase memory. Be sure to use energy and create strains to help you stay active. Since brain-derived neurotropic factor, BDNF, is released during creativity and exercise and has been shown to improve memory. So here's the thing. Here's the kit. This is the reason why it's $249. Because it's going to tell you what you need to know. People spend thousands of dollars a year on cannabis products, and a lot of them spend that much because they're seeking the one that will work for them, because some of them don't just give up. They keep trying and trying and trying. Unfortunately, some people do give up, and that's unfortunate, because then they're forced to go with some different types of treatments for their conditions, which may or may not work for their body either. So if you can get this report in front of somebody that is getting ready to go out and seek a cannabis product, this is definitely going to help them. It's going to save them money, number one, and not in any order, but also can save them from health problems. Okay, that should be the top. Let's look at the terpenes here. So this person's report says their top primary terpenes: limonene, beta-carotene. Now, you don't need to know what these all do, what they all are, where they come from. You don't need to know that when you get this report. All you need to know is these names. Okay, and the secondary terpenes are pinene and linalool. If each of you took this report, some of you would say, depending on your DNA makeup, may say limonene and beta-carotene is the primary, like it does here, or may say linalool and limonene, pinene, beta-carotene. It may be mixed and matched. And it's not uncommon to see some people with the same primary and secondary terpene recommendations, because if you can recall, we're all 99.9% identical with our DNA. We really are. And it's that 0.1% that determines everything else. So it's not unreasonable to see that it could possibly have, two people in the same, group, household, street, block, whatever, have these certain recommendations. Now, it also gives you a ratio, which is very important. It says, based on your genotype, the ideal THC to CBD ratio it's supposed to say that you should aim for is 2 to 1. Now, this particular patient is in a state where the only legal form of cannabis in their state is CBD. So they have to do the best they can with what they have access to. It breaks down these activity groups. Remember those ones that we were talking about: medicate, energize, chill, sleep, create, and elevate, right? Now, medicate. You can read this if you at your leisure, but it's actually going to give you name brands. Now look at this. This is an actual product that's sold in the area that this person, got their application submitted from. Actual name brands. And look at that. It's also it's broken up between CBD and products that have THC. Again, remember, the report does not discriminate. Here's our brand of CBD oil. That's a simple product placement. That has nothing to do with the DNA report. That's an advertising section. But that person can then contact us for our COAs or lab results to show the terpenes and the cannabinoids that are present in the oils that we make. Elevate. Again, this category, you'll notice it's got the strains and name brands. Create, strains and name brands. Sleep, strains and name brands. Chill, energize. So we're going to scroll right to my favorite part again, is the raw results. Okay? So look at this. I'm not going to go through all these, but I'm just going to go ahead and go through a couple. So this is a very scary one. This particular mutation. Look at this. This person's DNA makeup says that based on the results, they have a slightly increased likelihood of developing a psychotic disorder from cannabis use and slightly increased risk of alcoholism. So yes, there is scientific proof that with the right genetic makeup, if you smoke marijuana, you could possibly become dependent on other chemicals if you abuse it. So remember, we're always taught, it's a gateway drug or this, that, and the other thing. And people are like, oh, that's BS. Well, science is science. So here we go. Here's the recommendation. Consider avoiding strains high in THC. Medicate strains are high in CBD, which may have antipsychotic properties. Simultaneous use of alcohol and cannabis can significantly increase the concentration of THC and may lead to negative side effects. Use it with caution. Okay? Let's go through another one here. All right. This one's embarrassing to see when you get your report. Lower performance IQ. Okay. Lower performance IQ points compared to T allele carriers. So here's the deal. With this particular mutation they're studying, it looks like alpha-pinene, THCV, and CBD can exert neuroprotective actions and mitigate cognitive impairment. This particular patient, by the way, customer rather, had problems has arthritis and has all kinds of problems. This person is overweight. And so there's things in this report that let this person really know about themselves, really learn about themselves. And I actually, when we got the report on this one, I asked her to call me when she did. And then she started reading it to me, and I was like, well, let me ask you some questions, and we checked it out. Here's one right here, this FTO mutation. 1.3 times increased obesity risk. Okay. Here's some more. Again, this OPR1, we talked about this in one of our other panels, and this is the opioid mutation, more susceptible to pain, stronger alcohol cravings, less response from opioids. So what I'm trying to get at here is that this raw data is no different than the raw data that we see in our other retail panels. Okay? It just is laid out in a different format. So now we've talked about CBD and THC. Of course, we know THC is the one that has the psychotic or psycho effect on us, gets us high. But here's some of the side effects. Some of them are good, some of them are bad. Okay, we all know, we see the joke and about how people smoke marijuana and they get really hungry. Well, that actually is a side effect from THC. Also, here's some more. Elation, so you're happier. You feel relaxed with THC intake. You can sedate yourself. Pain relief. Memory impairment. Okay, that's a side effect. Side effect is energy, hunger, drowsiness, increased heart rate, dry mouth, red eyes. Time appears to sometimes go slower, laughing uncontrollably, dizziness, anxiety, and paranoia. So, do you think it's important to find out what's probably the best products, being that these things will actually affect you in such a way? All right, we're going to go ahead and stop the recording right now and open up the phone.